Hi everyone, let's get going with our next chapter. I hope you were, hello. I hope you enjoyed the chapters yesterday and you weren't too busy waiting for these next ones. Very, very exciting yesterday. And of course we've got to find out what's going to happen to Max. Thank you, Ember. The explorer passed Max to Lila, one hand under the boy's head. Stay here with him, we'll be quick. No, said Lila. Whatever it is you're planning, I need to know. She rearranged Max in her arms, clumsy with love, cradling him to her. Come on. The explorer opened his mouth as if to argue, then met Lila's eyes and shut it again. He turned to the wall of green foliage. It goes back further than you think, he said. Come, push away the vines, quick. Fred shoved aside a great armful of lianas, some browned with age, as thick as wrists. The vines looked too closely woven to have grown up that way. Up close it was clear that it had been draped from something. They fell, uniform, into an impenetrable curtain. Did this grow here, or did you plant it? Panted Fred as he pulled at the vines. It felt like trying to climb through a ledge. I planted it, plaited it, pruned it. It's worth having a secret space. The explorer pushed past Fred, pulling out his machete. He hacked through the foliage. Almost done. He widened a space and held back the vines for Liana. She shifted so the boy's head rested on her shoulder. Then she stepped through. Fred heard her gasp. He pushed aside the final layer of tendrils and creepers. He stopped short. The vines fell from the roof of a large three-sided stone room. It was built in a similar stone to their sleeping room, but with its ceiling almost intact. It was as high as a cathedral, and it smelt of moss and quietly growing things. The walls were covered in vines, and something had made a nest in the far corner, a ball of grass and feathers. And in the middle of the bare earth floor, something shone yellow and chrome in the green light. An aeroplane, breathed Fred. Precisely. The explorer strode towards the plane. Come quickly. They edged forward, clumped together, Lila's arms tight around her brother. Here she is. The explorer thumped the side of the plane. It was small, with two seats set one behind the other. But you said it burned, said Fred. I did not. You assumed that. I said there was a fire, which is not the same thing. I was on a recce when she started to choke. We crash-landed through the canopy, straight into the stone city. Saved my life. It took 5 years to repair her. Very slowly, Con put a hand out and stroked the wing of the plane. I've been keeping the boulevard between the trees clear of grass ever since I came, just in case. It'll make a good runway. He stopped, corrected himself. It will make an adequate runway, I hope. We're going to fly home. Excuse me, cried Pants. We're going to fly home, said Con. Her eyes were shining. I am not. I can no longer fly. He smacked his wounded leg. You need both feet to fly a plane. You will fly. You want us to fly the plane? Asked Fred. Well, not all three of you, one of you. No, said Con. Never, not possible, absolutely not. We've already been in one plane crash. Have you any idea what the odds are of surviving two? What else are you planning to do? Con looked at Max. She looked at the plane. It's much simpler to fly than you think, said the explorer. Max gave a moan and struggled in Lila's arms. There is enough fuel for one brief lesson and the journey to the hospital. But which of you will fly? Lila? As Max is your brother, you have first rights to it. I can't, said Lila. Her eyes were full of tears. I would, but I can't breathe when I'm near heights. Con? Fred? Said the explorer. Absolutely no way in the world. I don't want to kill us all, said Con. The explorer looked at Fred. Fred looked at the plane. His insides were growing hot with the hope of it and cold with fear. His fingertips began to quiver. His ears were ringing. I can't, he said. Why not? Asked the explorer. The thing that makes driving dangerous is the other drivers. There will be no other planes. And one lesson? You'll have to learn fast. What if I crash? Asked Fred. You'll refrain from doing so, said the explorer. But you have not, I notice, said that you won't. You've only said that you can't. I say that you can. Fred, said Lila. Her eyes met his. Fred had never seen a person look at once so frightened and so brave. All right, said Fred. I'll try. Of course you will, said the explorer. "Lila and I will make Max comfortable. I'll return in an hour. I expect you to be waiting here." The explorer held out his arms to take Max, but Lila clutched him closer to her chest. "I'm coming with you," said Con. "I could be useful. I care for my great-aunt when she's sick." "Don't waste time," said the explorer to Fred. "Climb into the front seat and get a feel for the controls, but don't press the black button. That's the starter. I don't recommend you try to fly through stone." And they turned, leaving Fred alone in the great stone cathedral with the waiting aeroplane. And that was the end of that chapter. Let's go on to the next. This one is called The Green Sky. An hour later, Fred helped the explorer cut and pull down the rest of the vine of curtains, enough to roll the plane out of the stone shed and onto the boulevard of the ancient city. Fred climbed back into the front seat of the aeroplane and looked through the windshield. Seat padding was sprouting up from holes in the black leather, but inside of the plane was spotlessly clean. "How's Max?" he asked. "Sleeping. Lila's keeping him cool with rainwater. Is he going to be all right?" The explorer looked serious. "As long as you can get him to the hospital in Manea soon. Yes, I hope so." "And if—" Fred began and stopped. "If not, no," said the explorer shortly. There was a muscle contorting in his jaw. It felt entirely wrong to be sitting here, while across the stone boulevard Max struggled to breathe. The explorer must have seen Fred's rigid body, must have seen him shaking because his voice grew less curt. "He will live for now," he said, "but you must get him to a doctor, so concentrate." Fred bit down on his tongue and clenched his fists. He looked at the dials arranged in a row in front of him and at the joystick between his knees. Everything shone. There was not a speck of dust or greenery. "I clean the engine every day to keep the rust off, and I run it now and again just to check it's alive. Look after the things you love, or else you won't deserve to love anything," said the explorer, swinging his bad leg in after his good one and settling into the back seat. "I think we heard the engine," said Fred, "twice. We thought it was an animal, a panther or a bear, or a person roaring." "Possibly. It could equally have been a panther. There are some in these parts." "Why did you hide it, though?" "For many reasons. Among others, this particular plane is very identifiable. It's well known to belong to the man I once was. For that reason, I must ask you to set fire to it on arrival, if the impact with the ground hasn't done so already." Fred twisted round to stare at him in astonishment. "Burn it?" But the explorer was already pointing at the dials. "These are the things you need to know. Those dials are for speed and altitude, and that spirit level shows if you're flying straight. You want the bubble in the spirit level to be in their direct centre." Fred muttered the words after him, trying to force them into his memory. Speed, altitude, spirit level. The pedals banked left and right. Fred put his feet on the pedals. They were much smaller than the pedals in his father's Ford. He prodded them experimentally. 2 wires running down each side of the inside of the plane shifted as he pressed the pedals. "The joystick?" The explorer shook the back seat joystick. "Goes up, down, left and right." Fred held the joystick. It was black with a red button on top. It moved loosely under his fingers. "I have one too, in the back seat, so I can take control at any time. This wrench, like a window winder, controls the throttle, meaning how much power you can give yourself. And that's more or less it. Now, you see the button I told you not to press? The black one, on the right?" It wasn't a button so much as an oblong, like the lid of a fountain pen sticking out from the dashboard. "Yes?" "Press it." Fred pressed it. His hands were shaking. Nothing happened. "Again," said the explorer. Fred pressed harder. The engine let out a moan, a cough, and then roared into action. The plane shook. Fred could feel it vibrating. It added to the wild prickling of his skin. "Do you hear that? That's the sound of life becoming," said the explorer. His eyes were glinting a little manically. Fred whispered under his breath, "Oh, help!" "Now, taking off is the easy part. You just point the plane in the direction you need to go, up through the hole in the canopy, open the throttle, pull back on the joystick and fly." Fred's breath had given up entirely now. "What about the rest of it?" He gestured at the dials. "I'll tell you when you're up there. We'll have to shout. If there's wind, it'll be loud, and the intercom was one of the few things I couldn't fix. Luckily, we have no need of a radio control tower. Now, go." Fred's entire body was metal and stone. He had to force his feet to move, pressing the left pedal to point the plane down the boulevard runway. "Now, open the throttle," shouted the explorer over the scream of the engine. How? Fred roared. Wind the winder! At your left side! The plane gathered speed, the wheels jolting over the slabs of ancient stone. Pull back! Pull back! Fred pulled back on the joystick with all his strength. He felt the nose lift, the front wheels leave the ground, his stomach jerk, and suddenly they were hurtling straight for the top of the canopy. The sky above him was crisscrossed with green. Fred let out a yell of fear, but the explorer pulled back further on his own joystick, and the tail cleared the greenery of the jungle. It would be a good idea to open your eyes, said the explorer. It makes it piloting easier. Fred opened his eyes. They were in the sky. How do you know they were closed? Mine were the first time I launched a plane, said the explorer. The tinge of madness in his voice was still there. You're flying. Fred looked down. The jungle was an infinite sweep of green, a Turkish carpet for a god. His heart was roaring louder than the wind whipping past his ears. The explorer leaned past and shouted in his ear. Use the stick to turn left. You need to get the feel of the controls. Very gingerly, Fred tilted the stick. More than that. You mean flying sideways without tipping the plane over. You need to feel you can take risks. Fred pulled the joystick hard to the left. The wing dipped and the plane swooped into the air. His stomach swooped with it. Less than that, yelled the explorer. A bird flew past them. The plane was heading straight towards it. Don't hit any birds, roared the explorer. It's bad for the engine. Fred jerked the joystick and the plane tilted straight up, shuddering in the sudden altitude. What now? Shouldn't you be controlling it? Fred's voice sounded panicky. Of course not. Joystick a little forward, called the explorer. The plane levelled out. Follow the tributary to the river. Before Fred had time to breathe, they were flying over treetops above an enormous flock of parrots, and then, quite suddenly, there was nothing between his feet and the Amazon River except air and a millimetre of tin floor. Oh, God, muttered Fred. The water below was a deep blue purple. He could see the shadow of the plane skidding across its surface. The explorer let out a noise that sounded like a growl, a guttural sigh. My God, it's beautiful! I'd quite forgotten. The river was staggering to look at. It made every inch of Fred thrum and burn. It's very easy to not want to come down, said the explorer. If planes didn't run out of fuel, I'd still be up here. It's the closest you'll ever come to being inside a fairy tale. Now, if you've got the feel of the controls, you can try flying through that cloud. Fred tightened his grip on the joystick. I don't think I want to. You should know how. It's important. Can I just keep doing this for now? No. Up, up. Fred pulled back and steered the nose of the plane into the cloud. The air was bitterly, shockingly cold and wet, and suddenly the world, which had been so intricately detailed, no longer existed. Keep going up, said the explorer. Come out the top of it. Fred pulled back on the stick and the nose of the plane rose. They flew up higher and higher into the blue. The joystick vibrated harder under his hands. He clutched it, trying to stop it shaking. The explorer leant forwards. Lighter touch, Fred. I know I said you can be firm with it, but you're holding it like a steak knife. Use the tips of your fingers. You gauge the wind by how the joystick shudders. Fred eased his grip. He felt the plane hum under his fingers. Better, said the explorer. The wind dropped and the roar in Fred's ears lessened. He looked down at the green world beneath. Are you sure we shouldn't be getting back to Max? He asked. The boy is safe for now, said the explorer. His voice was sharp. I wouldn't be up here if there was anything I could do for him down there. Sorry, said Fred. He looks so much like my boy, said the explorer suddenly. Those eyebrows. Fred hesitated. You said cholera? It happened a lot, said the explorer. He seemed to be trying to sound matter-of-fact. His voice was tight. Fred could barely hear him over the engine. I buried my gold signal ring with him, so that anyone finding his bones would know that he was mine, and that he was loved. I made myself a replacement. The plane gave a shudder. Fred couldn't tell if it was the sky or the man behind him. If an adult tells you that you will understand everything when you're older, you're being lied to. In fact, some things I never think you'll understand. I'm sorry, said Fred. It felt very inadequate. Turn left. The government cared very little for its indigenous people at that time. I wanted his death to count. All that down there? And the explorer dipped the nose of the plane to point downwards. I've made stores of plants, roots, fungus, of the things that might have saved him, perhaps. The jungle can heal if you know how. I have stores of medicine, of herbs, of information. Do you think I just drank Shaka, and polish my teeth? No, said Fred. I never thought that. The explorer's voice suddenly sank lower. Fred strained to hear him. I'd have gladly given everything I had. My life, of course. But that's so obvious it's boring. I would have burnt the entire rainforest to the ground to hold him for one single more minute. When you four tumbled down onto the city's floor, I'd have swapped your life for his as easy as blinking. I'd have gladly watched you die in exchange for holding him once more. He jerked the plane sideways and Fred gripped the seat with his fingernails. That's no longer the case. I was afraid that my heart had simply run out. But it transpires that the heart has its own petrol station, has its own coal, its own soap. It will renew, so use it hugely. The explorer banked sharply left again and began circling over. Now you're going to land the plane. I'll start bringing you in. Fred murmured a swear word under his breath, followed by another. Landings sound like the least fun part of flying, mostly because if you got it wrong, you were liable to be distributed all over the world in small chunks. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that, said the explorer. I'll get you through the canopy hole, and then you'll finish the landing. You want to land with your back and your front wheels on the ground simultaneously. Fred used his free hand to bring the collar of his shirt up to his mouth. He bit down hard. It helped keep his hand steady, though it tasted of honey and mud and dead bird. The explorer guided the plane towards the hole in the canopy. Fred craned round to look at him. His face was concentrated and glowing. They dipped down through the hole. Now take the controls, called the explorer. Fred aimed for the stretch of boulevard and for the Panther. As they hurtled downwards, the thought of Max, somewhere on the stone below, overtook Fred, and he jerked the joystick forwards and down, away from where the boy might be lying. The front wheels hit the stone and bounced again. The impact threw Fred forward, and his head smacked against the dashboard. The explorer took over the controls, wrenching the plane around. It bumped once, turned, sped up, and climbed into the air, back out through the hole. Fred shook himself, disorientated. They were back in the sky. That wasn't bad, said the explorer. What do you mean? It was terrible. I nearly killed us, shouted Fred. Not bad for a first try. The instinct is to push down with the stick, to get the nose onto the ground. The explorer sounded calm. But you have to pull backwards and up. You can practice that with the plane later on the ground. You need to get the instincts into your fingers. Now I'll loop us and come in again. This time, as they approached the stone, Fred pulled the joystick up. He held the stick steady in his hands. The nose was tilted too high to see the ground through the windshield, so he leant out the side, peering ahead, his heart screaming in his chest. The plane touched down, rose again, bumped, and suddenly it was speeding along the stone floor towards the wall. The wall seemed to be coming up very fast. Slow! Slow down to a halt! Good! The explorer reached forward and pulled back on the throttle and took over the controls. Good! The plane stopped. Fred sat in the front seat, sweat coursing down his face, both hands gripping his knees. It was astonishing, he thought. It was like there was nothing else on earth. He felt wobbly, uncooked. Now, what's the word that I heard you say in the sky? Said the explorer sternly. Sorry, said Fred. Where do you learn that word anyway? School. Pilots never swear. It makes them look panicked. Kindly remember that, and never let me hear you swearing again, in any circumstances. Sorry, said Fred again. But it was difficult to feel truly sorry, difficult to feel anything except the roar in his ears and the bite of adrenaline in his blood. But well done. That was a landing you should be proud of. Fred shook his head. I bounced. But you rescued it. That's the only part that matters. Okay, let's see how long the next chapter is, whether we can sneak it in. Oh, I think we can sneak it in. Next one is Waiting for Dawn. Lila sat with Max's head in her lap as he tossed and moaned. Bacca rested on the boy's stomach, breathing softly in his skin. Lila's eyes were red, and she'd bitten her lip so many times it was bleeding. As the evening started to grow blue, Fred could feel his nerves begin to crackle with terror. Max looked so thin, lying in the firelight, as if a single jolt from the aeroplane might kill him. He sat counting Max's breath until at last he could take it no longer. He jumped up and went in search of the explorer. He found him bending over the plane's engine, a burning torch in one hand for light. You'll have to take off as early as you can tomorrow, said the explorer. Max is lucid but burning hot. Follow the river northeast. Which way is northeast? Fred forced himself to stop nervously scratching the bites on his arms, which were already swollen and breathing. There's a compass in the plane. Con will be your navigator. She has a memory for topography. The river will take you to Menaias. The city's built right on the edge of the water. You can't miss it. There's a vast opera house with a glass dome roof and pink walls. The roof catches the sun, and you can see the shine of it from miles away. But if you run out of fuel just before you reach the city, I must warn you, you probably will. Fly inland. There'll be some cattle ranches with open fields. Land on the smoothest field you can find. Remember, front wheels first. Front wheels first. And the others should be heads down low behind the seats with their hands clasped behind their necks. What if I forget, though? What if I go crazy and panic? I think it's very unlikely that you'll do either. What if I do, though? You won't. Fred, I may be eccentric, but I'm not mad. He looked at Fred. It was the kind of look on a clear day you could see through your chest cavity to your heart. I wouldn't ask you to do this if I wasn't absolutely sure you were capable of doing it. Fred twisted his fingers. Are you sure you can't come with us? I mean, your leg doesn't stop you climbing trees. Insolent child, said the explorer. He reached into the engine and tightened a bolt. No, you wouldn't all fit in the back. We could do it in 2 shifts. There's only enough fuel for one journey, one way, and the plane wouldn't take off with the weight of 5 people. I'd have to leave one of you here. I could stay here with you, he said, wondering as he said if he meant it. You could not, Fred. There are people at home who need you. Adults don't need children. Yes, they do. He looked suddenly so fierce that Fred took a step backwards. You said children are undercooked adults. I know. I've forgotten things I should have never forgotten. Trust me, your father needs you more than you know. Fred said nothing, just stood staring at the plane, holding himself still. Fred, listen to me. Even if I could fly Max myself, it would mean I'd never get back here. They would recognise me. They'd recognise the plane. There would be questions and interviews in newspapers. Why? Why would there be interviews? Is it because your name's Percy Fawcett, or John Franklin, or Christopher McLaren? Are you one of them, the lost explorers? You are, aren't you? John Franklin would be more than 150 years old if he was alive, said the explorer mildly. That's rather unflattering, Fred. But you've got to be one of them. I told you, I've been alone so long I have no need for names. You're just a coward. You're scared to leave. I do not want to leave, certainly, and that is my choice, Fred. Fred made a face. I know, but believe me, this is where I'm happiest. Fred found himself swept with an unexpected wave of fury. He fought back the many unforgivable things he could have said. You don't seem all that happy, he mumbled. Happy is a peculiar word. It's one of the few words that makes me sad. I should have said, this is where I feel most honest. That's insane. Fred felt himself grow hot. Every inch of his skin was raging, including his gums. Why are you angry, Fred? I'm not. He glared at him full in the face. I'm scared, all right? Of course you are. But you've been scared all along and you've kept going. But that was different. Why? The others did everything with me, the raft, the food and everything. It has to be one of you, so why not you? If I mess this up, he didn't say if we die, but it was there unspoken, it will all be my fault. This is worse. Then you'll make the decision to steer towards fear. I think you can. I think you are built to pursue the things you're afraid of. Fear is a panther. Humans are stronger than panthers. You fight it tooth and claw, but you don't stop when you get tired. You stop when the panther's tired. Fred nodded. Then, just to check, he asked, do you mean metaphorically or... Metaphorically, yes. Although sometimes, in the case of my leg, for instance, literally. There was a cough behind him. Can I talk to you about something? Said the con. The explorer bent over the oil tank. Yes, of course. What's on your mind? Con glanced at Fred. Alone? The explorer didn't look round from the engine, but he jerked his head at Fred. Fred glared at Con, but he turned to go. He was halfway across the city square when he heard her speak. She tried to whisper, but her voice was sharp and carried on the night air. I'm not leaving. Fred turned in astonishment. The explorer was still methodically checking the engine. Fred stepped behind one of the trees that lined the central stone boulevard. I'm staying with you, said Con. I've made my mind up. Max needs to get to the hospital, but I don't. I'm afraid you're not, said the explorer. He adjusted a bolt in the engine. I wouldn't be any trouble. I've been saving my food, and I can eat spiders. I've tried a lot of dried meat in my pockets. I know, I can smell it. And your face gave you away hours ago. There's a hint, and then there's an alarm going off on the ground floor of the Bank of England. Your face is a siren. I'm sorry, child, but you'll be getting on that plane. I can't, I just can't. I know, said the explorer. His voice was very gentle, but you have to. I'm better here. At home, sometimes I wish people were dead. The explorer nodded, silent. He waited. You don't understand, said Con. I really wish it hard. Sometimes I'm almost sick I want it so much. The explorer nodded again. That's something that the human heart does, Con. It bites. Just don't let it panic you. It will pass, that special kind of wishing. How do you know? Between the ages of 10 and 16, I spent most of my life wishing half my class and most of my schoolmasters were dead. And all of them remained indubitably, frustratingly alive. Nothing bad at all happened to any of them, though one of them, I believe, did move to Belgium, but that's as far as it went. But I need to stay here. Con's face was pink. It all makes more sense here. I understand. Although, of the four of you, I rather thought you were least keen on this place. You're allowed to change your mind. She was turning suddenly redder, red at the ears, at the neck, and rising to her forehead. I love it. I've never loved anything like this. At home it's all sit still and don't touch. Everything has a cover so it doesn't get dirty. Some of the covers have covers. People want me to be ways I can't be. Yes, I know what it feels like, said the explorer. But if I want to scream here, I can. If I want to eat with my fingers or climb a tree, nobody stops me. I can sleep when I want to. I can run if I want to. She looked particularly defiant at the last words, as if confessing a sin. He seemed to swallow a smile. You don't have to go to the rainforest to do those things. They're more to do with you than the jungle. Pay attention to the world the same way you did out here. It will change the way you feel. Attention and love are so closely allied as to be almost indistinguishable. Please, Con whispered. He sighed. You need to go home because I don't want people coming looking for you and finding you here. I cannot have people finding this place. He squatted down to look at Con in the eye. But know this. This is the first and not last of your adventures. It's not going to be easy for you. You'll have to be honest. Resist the urge to arrange your fears and angers at their most becoming angles. You're not the one who was born to ride lightly over the world. Do you know what a lion heart is? I'm not sure, she said. She was blinking hard. People think that it means brave, and it does, but it also means a heart with claws. That's you, Con the Lionheart. Fred stepped into their line of vision. He coughed loudly. Con whipped around and glared, the black glare of embarrassment. I thought you'd gone, she said. I didn't know you were an eavesdropper. And she began to stalk away. Fred ran after her. He wasn't sure if what he was about to do was a sensible idea. It might, he thought, get him elbowed in the face. Con, Fred said, where do you go during the holidays? I live with my aunt, you know that, she said aggressively. Then after a long pause, why? Well, said Fred, it's just that we've got a spare room and my father's always telling me to bring more friends home. Friends? Said Con. A flush began to rise up her neck to her ears. Obviously, said Fred. Friends. And that is the end of our chapters for the day. We will find out what happens tomorrow and if they make it safely home. We are so close to the end of the book. That's all we've read so far. And that's the tiny bit that we've got left. So, answer questions and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye!